Coming up on this episode of the Tesla Model 3 Owners Club show,
latest Model 3 news.
All right, the Tesla Master Plan, Part Deux.
Gigafactory grand opening.
Yeah, possibility of a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack coming soon to the Model S.
Autopilot 2.0.
Yep, the Solar City deal looks like it's happening.
Big Nissan Leaf group buy. Somebody's organizing that. We'll tell you more.
Okay. Porsche, Volkswagen, and Mercedes are moving along with their EV plans.
And we'll get to some more viewer mailbag.
Great.
All coming up.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Tesla Model 3 Owners Club show. My name is Kenneth Bokor.
Hi, and I'm Trevor Page. So thanks for joining us. We got a lot of stuff to get through today. So stay tuned.
Absolutely, lots of stuff.
All right, start us off, Ken. What do we got first?
We're back to our regular format today. It was a great interview, by the way, just to recap for the Tesla, what was it, Canada X?
Yes, Tesla Cross Canada with Silke and Rolfe. Yeah, great couple. We had a lot of fun that day. A little bit hot. They weren't used to that. But
exactly.
A lot of fun. They're in Quebec City now. So.
Love that trailer. That's really neat.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty cool. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to watch it. If not, please watch the last episode and get all caught up on that. So as we stated at the top, we've got some updates on the Model 3, some news. Of course, Elon confirmed at the last earnings call that the Model 3 design is done and locked in and was sent to manufacturing, I guess, mid or by end of July.
But mid-July they've sent the car off to a manufacturing team so that they could start building the tooling for the car, sending designs off to suppliers so that they can start building prototype parts and stuff. So it's certainly moving along. Good,
absolutely,
good information. So.
And of course, all that equipment is online, as you mentioned, at the Fremont factory now. And I guess the next steps are about 9 to 10 months to set all this stuff up in the factory to get those production lines tooled and built, so that they can start going next year.
That's right. Back in 2015, Tesla had installed a very large paint facility in advance for the Model 3. That new paint facility can do up to 10,000 cars a week. So they're already kind of ahead of the game in some respects. The rest of the tooling for Model 3 is currently in the works.
Right. And I think they even want to extend that automation to get even more efficient and faster.
Well, I think we can talk about that maybe a little bit later in the Gigafactory, but I'll touch on it right now. They did announce plans for the Model 3 production line to be in the future, not the initial version at the Fremont factory, but over time to have essentially no people on the production line crawling around inside the vehicle. It will be largely all automated. Now, they'll still have people on the production line sort of fixing the machinery and stuff, but future versions of the factory, they really want to optimize that whole thing. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later.
Absolutely, and I know there was some discussions came out about the new battery format size.
Yeah, so Tesla did.
After you did a great video explaining the battery before, so.
Yeah, at the Gigafactory, we'll talk about this. So the final cell size format that Tesla has finally confirmed for the Model 3 is called a 2170. Now, the current one is an 18650. We've shown this before on the show.
Yep.
That's an 18650 there. It's a little bit bigger than than a AA battery. It's 18 millimeters, 65 millimeters tall. That's where it's called an 18650. Now, the new cell is 21 millimeters wide and 70 millimeters tall. So they're shortening it. It would have been normally a 700. They're just calling it a 2170.
Right. They're dropping that last digit, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this cell has been confirmed for the Model 3, and eventually they've also said too it will eventually make its way into the Model S and the Model X. They have to redesign the pack a little bit to make room for the newer cell format, but so that's been confirmed. That's what's happening as far as the cells are concerned. They're going to start manufacturing those towards later this year in the Gigafactory. They're still setting up the tooling inside the factory for that.
Great. And there's been some reports that come out, since we're talking about the factory, about Tesla ordering enough parts for a fleet of around 300 Model 3 prototypes. Have you heard anything more about that?
Nothing at this point. It's typical for them to place orders with potential suppliers to get a lot of parts kind of in advance as much as possible. It doesn't mean they're going to make 300 cars. They just have to have something on hand so they can start building beta fleets of those vehicles. But like I said, the tooling in the factory is not even ready to start putting out finished cars. They might have some tooling and die stamps, to press out metal parts kind of right now. They probably had some of those made in their facility that they bought in Michigan. so they could press out some basic body panels. But this stuff takes time. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to start producing in a year from now, you got to start getting some, some parts kind of ordered in advance.
Absolutely. And there's also been some talk about the Model Y, that it's been confirmed as the next car from Tesla, basing it on the Model 3 platform.
Yeah, this was the plan all along. They have announced, I mean, they've been saying this the whole time. If you watch any of the older Tesla, before the Model 3 was introduced, if you watch any of their presentations, they have always said, we're going to do a sedan and a SUV on the same platform in due time. They just don't have the resources to do 15 cars all at once. They got to do one at a time. So yeah, the Model Y is definitely a confirmed thing. Elon's been talking about it a lot more. So they will complete their master plan to have sexy as the 4 different car models.
And in your opinion, is that 2 or 3 years after the Model 3 production?
I would say it's at least a year, probably 2 years, maybe after Model 3 is actually in volume production.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we've had some email, some viewers mail us about, maybe I should hold off on Model Y. When do you think that's coming? So
you're going to be waiting for a while.
You'll be waiting even longer for a while. We mentioned at the top about the Gigafactory grand opening. I think most of our viewers that are watching this probably have seen some video, some of the interviews. There was a lot of media coverage about the Gigafactory. July 29th, they had a grand opening party for some select Tesla owners that were invited down, and some media that came out, I think, prior to that.
Yeah.
Construction, as you've seen, is well done on the expansion for that factory, for some of the footings to double the size by the end of the year. And if you get an opportunity, and we may have some of the pictures that you'll put up behind us here about how it looks now versus what it's going to look like when it's complete. And it's only 14% done, if I remember.
The current size before they started putting in the new footings for the expansion of the factory. Essentially, what they're doing right now, and it was shown. For people that are visiting the Gigafactory, is that they already put the footings in to double the size of the factory as it stands right now, which is only 14%. I think they said that they were hoping to have the factory doubled in size by the end of the year. That's just structure, not internals, but the structure of that. And of course, the Gigafactory has to be built in stages. So they said if all goes according to plan, by the end of the year, the factory will be double in size. So it's still only around about a third of the finished size of the total factory. And from what we saw at the Gigafactory videos that were taken and posted on YouTube, already it's a massive factory. It's actually 3 floors.
Very big.
Yeah, it's huge. And they already have some, Panasonic has been installing some of their tooling and some of the equipment to make that. They have some really large drying ovens. It's fascinating. I really encourage, I'll put a link in the show notes at the bottom. You can watch some of the videos. Totally fascinating.
And what's the final size of that Gigafactory when it's all done? How many square feet? Hundreds of thousands or millions?
Yeah, off the top of my head, like right now, it's currently the footprint is 800,000 square feet. Of course, you have to double that roughly to get your 2 floors. I think the final size is going to be around about 15 million square feet, something like that.
That's big, yeah. Yeah, I've been in over 500,000 square foot building in a warehouse, and I thought that was huge. Never mind 15 million, even though it'll be multiple floors still. It's going to be a pretty big facility.
I don't think anybody's really going to appreciate how big this facility is until it's really done. I mean, if you had a chance to visit it, it's just massive as it is right now. But
absolutely.
It certainly, the finished building's going to dwarf this. And it's like I said, at the end of the day, the whole purpose of the building is to get the cost down on these batteries by building them on U.S. soil, close to the source material and stuff. Now, there's also something that came out of the Gigafactory speech that Elon and JB Straubel. Now, JB is the Chief Technology Officer. He's responsible for all the battery development. That Tesla has plans, the next version of the factory, whether that be in China or Europe, that they will combine a battery factory and the car factory in one building. That'll be impressive.
That would be impressive.
Not now, but in a few years' time.
And that goes right along with what Elon's already talking about, just greater efficiencies, making things.
They seem to be very hell-bent.
Streamlining.
They've discovered this love of manufacturing, and it's showing in their production plans now. Not only from what they've been doing in the Gigafactory, but how they're designing the production lines for Model 3, as well as future Gigafactories and car factories combined where there's a lot of automation. I think in a few years' time, I think it'd be quite impressive to see what they've been able to pull off.
Absolutely, and I think cell production at the Gigafactory will start, or car cell production, by the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, they have to. If they're going to meet their deadlines for startup production next year, they have to have a stockpile. of cells to go, because they can't just start building cars and have cells come off the line. Apparently the cells do have to age a little bit. There is an aging room if you watch. It was quite interesting.
Like a fine wine?
Kinda, yeah. I think it really has to do with the chemistries inside the cell once they package it, that it has to settle a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, but it probably has to do with something, as far as the chemistry settling. So they do have to age a little bit, and they have these vast rooms with racks and racks where they put the little cells in these, look like milk cartons, if you will, and they're all automated with robots. There's also efficiencies that are involved too, because one of the things you have to understand is that when Tesla imports, and they're all brought in from Japan, the 18650 cells, they come in large cardboard boxes, and then that cardboard has to get recycled. All these materials for shipping have to get recycled. By building them in the factory and not using any cardboard for storage and putting them, it's more economical, it's more environmentally friendly. So it'd be interesting. They thought about the whole thing.
Good, and of course they've already been producing the Powerwall product at that factory.
The Powerwall and the Power Pack, which is the industrial version, are already in limited production at the facility. Now they still bring in the cells. The cells and the modules are made at the Fremont factory, and then they're shipped over to the Gigafactory, where they're finally assembled into the products. And we saw, if you watch the videos online, you'll see a little bit of that production happening.
Great. So it's all part of it, Elon's and Tesla's master plan, and there were news that came out over the last few weeks about part 2 for that, and it really, Elon broke it down into 4 parts. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so for those of you who may not be aware, Tesla had published Elon really had published in 2006 Tesla's master plan part 1, if you will, and it was really a 3-step approach: build a low volume, high priced sports car as a proof of concept, use that money to develop a mid-volume, lower cost sedan, which eventually turned out to be the Model S, and by extension of that, the Model X. And then use those funds and technology to really get down to the lower cost mass market car, and that's where we're at with the Model 3. Since they've completed these 3 tasks, essentially, they've decided, of course, now with the advent of the Powerwall, the Power Pack, and very soon this acquisition of Solar City, to really think about the second part of their long-term plans, and this is where the master plan part 2 comes in. So really it's broken down into 4 things. So it's to integrate energy generation and storage. So this is part of their Powerwall, Power Pack, and the acquisition of Solar City. They also want, in the second part, to introduce some new car models, obviously like the Model Y we mentioned before. They also want to do a new kind of pickup truck, and I think the new kind is rather interesting there, because it's not just going to be a clone of a Ford F-150. They really want to think, I think, a new way of developing something, where there's a large market segment, high profitability.
And I just want to add, there's been some renderings floating around about what this pickup truck might
these are just
like.
ideas.
They're ideas. They're not. So if you see that going, oh, that's what it's going to look like.
There's nothing official from Tesla.
Nothing official. Just want to make sure
these are just artist renderings.
Right.
The other thing too that they want to do is get into the semi-truck business. Now this is, I think, a market that's ripe for electrification, provided that they can figure out the charging situation, the distance, and so on and so forth. So it remains to be seen. We don't have really much comment on this, but I think it's an interesting market segment to get into. Lastly, Elon also mentioned that they want to do some kind of urban transportation vehicle based on a Model X, call it a minibus, if you will, where with autonomous driving capabilities, which is another part of the master plan, that they could probably eliminate sort of the driver's position and cram more people, maybe 10 to 12 people on a little bus of that sort, something like that. And one other thing that's not on the master plan, but Elon did tweet it out, that he was thinking about something like a mini cargo van, like a little Ford Transit type of vehicle, maybe something along those lines too. It's not part of the official master plan, but he mentioned that there's a possibility there too. So the third part is autonomy. Now we're talking about level 4 autonomy, which is, driverless, is what people think is driverless, the Johnny Cab type of situation. Ostensibly to increase, safety on the vehicle.
If you're not sure what that reference is, email us and we'll let you know. There's some trivia.
So going forward, it's all about autonomy and really building this stuff. And there's another report we'll talk about a little bit later. And this is coming a lot sooner than people think. Very, very soon. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So the last part of it is vehicle sharing. So Tesla wants to build a vehicle sharing fleet, a la Uber type of situation, where you could potentially also opt in your vehicle. So if you own a Model S or Model X or Model 3 and you want to make some money, you could loan your car into the fleet, sort of, as it were, so that you could rent out the vehicle. Now, it's not for everybody, but this is part of the plan long term. And I think in some respects, it also helps to, in large urban areas like in New York City or Toronto or in LA, the type of thing, that if you can have a large fleet of vehicles, because let's face it, most cars are only used about 5% of the time. The rest of the time, they're just sitting there in a parking lot or garage, driveway, not being used. So if you could find some kind of a fleet system where the vehicles could be utilized a lot more, then it could potentially reduce some of the congestion. Things like finding parking spaces, notoriously difficult in cities like San Francisco, New York, and Toronto's getting to be just as bad.
Yep, they're trying to promote more carpooling here, but it's not working.
Yeah. So that's kind of a grand overview of the part 2. This stuff will flesh itself out over the next few years, but that's kind of an overview. So it'll be interesting to see how they pull it off.
And certainly on the first step with the integrate the energy generation and storage, I mean they're well on their way with that, with the Powerwall, consumer and commercial products, with the upcoming acquisition of Solar City, which should happen. Again, it's all adding to that chain, that food chain that they have.
Sure.
So great story, great master plan. If you've got any comments or questions about it, please let us know. The minibus is interesting you mentioned, because there's been some pictures floating around that they're trying to base it on one of the VW chassis, right?
Yeah, again, these are just renderings. These are not final images.
Yeah.
They did mention that the minibus and the Tesla semi-truck would potentially be unveiled in prototype form within the next 6 to 9 months. We'll see. Production for those vehicles will not start for at least another 2 to 3 years. So they got so much on their plate right now.
Right.
But
because we want our Model 3s first, don't we?
Yeah.
Before our minibus.
Yeah. Let's get the Model 3 out first before you really start going with this stuff. But they're in early development inside of Tesla right now. I mean, sure, there's sketches and they're putting things on paper as to what they want to do. So this stuff is going to happen.
And some pretty cool stuff. And I think what I've seen as well lately on the chatter out there and a lot of media coverage is that this is spurring, of course, other auto manufacturers to do things similar. So we're seeing, I think, Volvo get into electric semi concept.
Mercedes
has one. So I mean, again, it starts slow. This is how it starts happening. You start getting it. There was a concept I watched about that the trucks have these really slick, they swap the batteries, they pull in, drop their trailer, swap the battery, and off they go kind of situation. So little by little we're starting to peck away at this combustion lifestyle that we lead. So
fossil cars.
Yeah. And which is great. And again, hopefully, we get to that Model 3 production. There were some conversations over the media over the last couple of weeks about the Model 3 reservations. Were they higher or lower than what the numbers they've come out? Some people, I think, were saying that, they said 373, but they're actually less. But according to some analysis of the last earnings call from Tesla and looking at the numbers that they've presented during that earnings call, they calculated that there was probably roughly just over 400,000 based on the cash flow that they received. And they predicted that's going to continue to climb from a reservation perspective.
Yeah, I think the reservations will keep climbing slowly, but I think we're going to see another, a spike. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to see a big spike, I think, when the second part of the reveal
I agree.
comes out, and then they finally show what the final car looks like and some of the technologies they've been holding very close to their vest about this vehicle. I think it's going to go crazy again.
It will, yeah. People see it, it's that close now, and it's that tangible?
Well, I think we've mentioned this before. If you're on the fence and you're thinking about putting down $1,000 or whatever their local currency is on your vehicle to put a reservation in Model 3, I think you'd be better off to do it now rather than later, because if you're going to try and time it.
Right.
Because, like I said, internally Tesla's planning for 500,000 cars a year out of the Fremont factory by 2018. By the second reveal, if it spikes again, or your deliveries probably won't happen for another year after that. So if you're thinking about it, probably be a good time to put it in now.
Exactly. And just for a full and fair disclosure, we don't work for Tesla. We're not here to promote you to buy a Tesla car. I do own Tesla stock, and I'm long on the stock. I'm not sure if you have any stock or not.
I do, and I'm long as well.
So we just want to get full and fair disclosure. We're in this because we believe in the vision for Tesla. We are just gaga about the Model 3 and can't wait to get our hands on that and that whole EV infrastructure that they're all part of. So great. Of course, the other exciting news
just this week,
definitely maybe won't come with the Model 3, but certainly is going to be out there, is a 100 kilowatt battery pack. There was an article from electech.co that the 100 kilowatt battery pack was approved by European authorities. So it's kind of the first of the standards, I guess, the approval process that happens.
Sometimes these leaks come from the most unexpected of places.
Absolutely.
Certainly not Tesla.
Certainly not Tesla. So we can talk a little bit more. I think it'll be available. They're going to call it a P100. Is that right?
Well, yeah. The naming convention is going to stay kind of intact. And 100D, a P100D, a P100D with ludicrous, obviously.
My goodness.
We're seeing essentially it's not a new battery pack from a design aspect. I'm sure it's just chemistry changes, maybe a little bit more density inside the cells as far as how they wrap the internals. But this is all part of the plan. Is battery technology improves, the chemistry improves, so every little bit. We've already seen 60 kilowatt, 75, 85s, 90s, very soon 100. This was a leak, by the way, that had happened from a Tesla hacker a number of months ago who had discovered references in the Tesla firmware in his car, reference to 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, and he tweeted it out, and Elon had said, "Oh, good sleuthing," and kind of left it at that. But now we're seeing more leaks. There was also a recent leak, I think it happened today or yesterday. Tire Rack in the U.S. had also listed a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack option as part of one of the vehicle on there.
Wow.
So, anyways, it's not a matter of if this is happening, it's a matter of when. We don't know when, but it's certainly coming. The other interesting note, too, is because this was leaked by the European authorities, they had done some what they call, like in the U.S. and North America, we have something called the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and they do the testing as far as gas mileage is concerned. So they're the ones that really rate the vehicles. Now, the EPA testing is a lot more stringent than what's called the NEDC, or the New European Driving Cycle. That one's very lenient. So they had basically advertised that the car would get 380 miles of range or 613 kilometers. Now, in North America, the testing procedures are a lot more strict. I mean, we're not talking about driving downhill with the wind behind you and the air conditioning off. This is real world miles that you can generally count on. So it basically translates to over 300 miles, about 325 miles, which is 500 kilometers, give or take.
That's pretty good.
So so we're, and don't forget, I mean, that's a 10% increment over the 90 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I think what this does is that I think what's happening here is Tesla is taking and this is still based on the 18650. This is not the new cell. So they're doing chemistry improvements in this cell alone on the Model S and the Model X. And what that does is that it just pushes the range of the vehicles up. And I think what will happen with Model 3 is that we will either see, lower ranges, or they may just surprise and say, we fooled you, 215 miles is wrong. We're actually pushing for 285 or something. Right. Especially, with the newer cell. So we'll see how this translates, but I think what it's doing is opening up some holes for the Model 3 to kind of fit in.
Exactly. And that's exciting news for us that are sitting here waiting for the Model 3, for us to purchase it fully and get delivered. So, but great news as they continue to expand the range from an EV vehicle perspective. And, on the technology, as you mentioned, not only is the battery evolving, but certainly is Autopilot. They're one of their best features. Again, another source from Electrek about new hardware that's been included to include triple front-facing cameras with various angle lenses, some more radar sensors, and I know we talked about Autopilot in a previous episode where we had some pictures about some of this funky things that they were testing.
Yeah. Well, what's happening here is that this article came from Electrek, and they had somebody who was familiar with the Autopilot 2.0, if you will, development process, and they were basically saying that the front-facing cameras. Now, if you look at a Model S or a Model X in the rear-view mirror housing, if you look at it from the front, there's cameras facing forward, and those are the ones that are reading the lines on the road. Now, for better autonomy, you need to have not only redundancy, but you need a variety of camera lenses on there for different wide angles, all of them focused on doing different things. You need one to read the lines, you need another one to look at pedestrians and street signs, these kind of things. Right. In combination with that, we also need some improved hardware. Like the ultrasonic sensors around the vehicle are great, but the range is only about 16 feet. So the report is also saying that there's going to be more radar. Now, some of the other car manufacturers are using LiDAR. That's a little spinny bit, and a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket on the top.
Right.
The problem with LiDAR is that it's a visual wavelength, it's not radar. Right. So it's encumbered by things like smoke and rain and all these other things. And Tesla's...
And it's very expensive, I believe, too.
Well,
right?
yeah,
More
it is.
costly,
Yeah, well, like I said, that stuff will get cheaper over time. But for now, for the time being, Tesla's focusing on radar because it can see through sleet and snow and, you know, all the usual things. So what the report also said too is that they're adding more radar, so potentially, you know, one in each corner, in addition to the ultrasonic sensors. Elon had also tweeted a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, that they're working with Bosch, which is the manufacturer of the radars, to do what's called a point cloud, which is if anybody has an Xbox with the Kinect thing, where it sends out, you know, pulses of radar or LiDAR in the room, and it makes a little point cloud, and from that it can determine three-dimensional space. So Elon had basically said that they were working with Bosch on generating a point cloud with what they call temporal smoothing, which is looking at the differences between them, to be able to generate a 3D map, which is something that LiDAR does. Radar doesn't, but LiDAR does. So it's kind of an amalgamation of both technologies to be able to get them a 3D view of the world around them, so they can really enable this new autopilot technology.
And this view being able to encompass obviously a lot more than 16 feet, or
when
you're traveling
yeah.
at 100
My
kilometers an hour.
understanding, my understanding of the
16
radar
feet
right
isn't a
now is
lot,
about
so-
160-foot range.
Okay.
So
good.
yeah, they really need.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're doing autonomous, you need to be able to see more than just a few feet away from you. You need a
Absolutely.
situational awareness, 360 degrees around the vehicle. So we'll see more of that. Elon also quoted too. It's quite interesting. He basically said, and this was during the conference call. He says, "What we've got will blow people's minds. It blows my mind, and it's coming way sooner than anybody thinks." So.
We love it when he talks like that.
Elon has a habit of really stating grandiose things, but the difference is that he actually does make it happen.
Right.
Now, as far as the time scale on this, I'm not a betting man, but maybe end of the year.
Or into sometime early next year. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Somewhere in there. We'll see. Be prepared.
It's definitely happening. And it looks like what's happening as a done deal as well on our next story is the Solar City deal. So if you're not familiar, Solar City being one of the largest consumer and commercial solar panel sellers and installers, manufacturers as well of these technologies in the U.S. I believe the U.S. headquartered. Maybe San Francisco, I don't remember.
It's in Southern California.
Southern Cal
Unfortunately,
somewhere.
I don't know how.
Yeah, and so obviously it fits that Part 2 master plan that we talked about earlier about the whole storage and the energy and everything around those different metrics. So Tesla put in a bid to acquire it. I believe that's got approvals by shareholders, just a matter of the SEC approval. So probably I think mid-September, I think is what we're seeing for it finally go through.
The vote is supposed to happen sometime after September 14th,
Okay.
so we're just waiting on SEC approval, and they also have a 45-day what's called a go-shop period, where they're allowed to entertain offers from prospective other buyers.
Right.
But at this point, it looks like it's definitely happening.
Yeah.
They've also announced that they are going to be introducing 2 new products by the end of the year. One of them is a new type of solar panel, and the other one was really, really interesting. And it comes directly from, you know, the shareholders, or not the shareholders meeting, but the financial call, and not Tesla's financial call, Solar Cities, which they just had.
That's right. Yeah.
And Elon was quoted saying that they're going to be doing a solar roof. He says it's not solar panels on a roof, but the product is actually the roof, which is basically a roof made of solar panels rather than just being solar panels put on an existing roof.
Cool.
And I think that really comes from his many quotes before, where they were saying, we want to build a beautiful product. Because some people seem to feel, my wife included, that she's not keen on the solar panel thing because they look ugly. And that's a difference of opinion, but they seem to think that they have a product that, when put into place, it doesn't look like solar panels. It actually looks like a normal roof. So we should find out more towards the end of the year as what this product actually looks like. But this deal is definitely happening.
There's been a little play in some of the solar. I mean, if you look at the Nissan Leaf, one of them, you know, I think the SL model, it has a little tiny solar panel, and that's just a trickle charge. I believe the 12-volt battery, not necessarily the actual battery pack for the car. So for some of the accessories, but in your opinion, you're talking potentially about a roof that could add more power to the existing batteries, or is this just more of an accessory type of if they were to design and implement something like that?
So Elon has mentioned the goal with Solar City is to have a one-stop shop where somebody could potentially come in and buy a vehicle, and then they say, well, what about solar? Because right now as it stands, they say, oh, well, we got to send you to Solar City. Well, what about storage? Well, we have our battery pack. So if they can come in and say, look, we can sell you a whole package, the solar panels, the storage solution for the batteries, and a vehicle, and have one payment, and we do the installation, and everything's taken care of, that from a product aspect, it makes total sense to do that. So that's really the impetus behind kind of the deal.
And we're seeing some videos out there on YouTube as well of owners that have solar panels on their roof, that have power, the power walls in their garage. They're capturing energy by day. They're using that energy at night, so they're virtually off the grid, or vice versa, storing that energy to be used, and either putting some of it back in the grid or using it off the grid and not paying for it from that perspective. And I believe they're even charging their vehicles with that, with the Powerwall, if I'm not mistaken.
To a certain extent. The other part that's not really talked about too is Tesla is also going to be introducing a new version, a more powerful version of the Powerwall sometime before the end of the year too. So there's a third part of this too that really we haven't seen yet, but that's part of the plan as well.
But I think that's the overall vision. If you were to look into the future. It absolutely does. Now, we talked about, we don't do a lot of talking about the Leafs. I just mentioned something earlier about the Leaf, but that this came across a really good story about group buy in Montreal, Canada, of a bunch of consumers that are looking to buy Nissan Leafs. Maybe tell us a little bit more what you found out about that.
Yeah, so there's a gentleman by the name of Bruno Marcoux in Montreal. I have to say it right because I am from Montreal.
Yep, you do.
He decided to do an organized group buy based on something that had happened in the U.S. I think it was last year with a local dealership.
That's right. I do remember.
Right now, they have a list of they have a website. I'll put it in the show notes if you're interested in going to take a look at it. They have over 2,500 signatures already on this list of interested buyers.
Wow.
So they've also been saying that it's a combination of 2016 and 2017 model years, because the model years are kind of flipping over about this time of year.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on this, and I think it'll really bode well. Quebec is much like Ontario is going to be, is very forward-thinking as far as the EVs are really concerned. So this bodes well for those guys to be able to get in on the rebate plan that's in place in Quebec and stuff. So
have you heard about any potential discounts that they might expect to receive because of this large buy?
I don't know all the numbers, but of course that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a group buy to be able to get the maximum amount of discounts possible and get everybody onto the plan, so they can also get the provincial rebates that are in place in Ontario, or in Quebec, I should say. So we'll keep an eye on the story, but it's looking really promising. And
because we report on Tesla and more so the Model 3, this is potentially something that we should watch, because do you think it's something that somebody could go to Tesla with and say, I've got 3,000 people that want to buy a Model 3 and once they're up and running?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, that's not the way Tesla works.
Doesn't seem to be the way they work. But
no, it would be nice, but no. Tesla... There's a lot of stories of family members and movie stars trying to buy the car, and everybody.
They give you the referral credit.
Yeah, you can do the referral credit, not on a Model 3, but if you want to buy a Model S or a Model X, you can get a referral credit. It's $1,000 off. But everybody pays the same price. That's part of the deal with Tesla, is everybody's treated equally.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll stay tuned. We'll find out what happens with this group buy and just let you know. It'll be interesting to see what they're able to get. Now, we mentioned some more manufacturers as well out there. Porsche, VW, and Mercedes are enhancing and expanding their EV plans. Again, more articles we've sourced through Electrek. Mercedes is formally announcing their EV line under the subname EQ, and I forget what that stands for.
I don't have the top of my hand. They're being introduced at the Paris show. The Paris Auto Show.
That's right. They're going to have 4, I think, models, 2 sedans and 2 SUVs, I think, under that umbrella, and at the Paris show next month, or in September. It's September, right?
I believe it's September.
And then Porsche getting involved in VW as well.
Yeah, so there was a prototype of a Porsche that was snapped recently. It was a Cayenne Coupe prototype, and it was out in the wild. Now, it's not a production car. It's largely just a test bed, probably from technology pulled from the Audi Quattro platform. Wow. Probably an amalgamation of the Mission E technology. A lot of that stuff all the same. I mean, it's all the same, group. Porsche, Volkswagen, and Audi, they're all the same kind of automotive group. So anyway, so the German manufacturers are certainly moving ahead with these kind of plans. The only one that's kind of left out a little bit is BMW. They've since pulled back a little bit on the i-Series. They're in the process of redesigning them.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see a lot of activity from these guys for a little while.
Right.
They did announce, I think I saw the article today, that there's going to be a fully electric 3 Series with, I believe it was a 90 kilowatt hour battery pack. I mean, these guys don't have a Gigafactory, so they're not going to be able to get the battery cost down. So expect that car to really be like BMW M3 territory in terms of price. So it'll be performing.
There is some, I think Volkswagen, though, is looking to build a plant, though, a battery plant. Like
they haven't announced anything formally. There's been a lot of rumors and scuttlebutt in the industry that they're planning on building something like a Gigafactory because Volkswagen has plans to introduce about 30 new models over the next 10 years and really go to electrification. This whole Dieselgate situation has really galvanized the company to do the right thing and start moving. So stay tuned. We're going to see a lot of activity from VW over the next few years. Very exciting. Very exciting. And my wife will be happy. She loves Volkswagen. So.
There you go. And yeah, and I just read something, I think, yesterday about VW. Again, another entry-level model that's going to be all EV. They're going to announce it, I think, later this year at one of the auto shows. Could be Paris as well.
Yeah, one of our forum members had gone to the Montreal EV show a couple of months ago, I think it was.
Yeah, it was in June.
And, and he had told me privately that he'd spoken to one of the Volkswagen reps and confirmed that the e-Golf is coming to Canada by the summer of next year. It's not available now, but the e-Golf is certainly coming. So,
and that's a plug-in electric or a hybrid?
Full battery.
It's a full battery.
Yeah, full battery electric.
Sorry, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. One of the things we've discussed before is some of the EV charging infrastructure in various places. You know, we talked about supercharging being expanded before in other shows and showing some different maps and things. There was an article that came out about new 150 kilowatt chargers that are starting to come out that would bring the cost down for charging and increase the times. I think the current superchargers are now 145, if I'm not 135 or 145 kilowatt. So again, it's just another point where they're increasing even the infrastructure technology to get to that point to almost emulate a 10-minute gasoline pit stop type of approach. So now, you know, with a nice car, you stop at the gas station, takes you 5 to 10 minutes to fill it up. Maybe you grab a coffee or whatever, use the facilities to grab lunch. Maybe it's 10 or 15 minutes. I think that's eventually the experience that the EV industry and auto manufacturers are trying to get to eventually. Mm-hmm. So would you agree with that?
I agree. My wife and I just did our vacation.
Yes.
We went out east, and we did a lot of driving. Even though I have an ICE car, I thought about, the whole time I was thinking, what would this trip be like in a Model 3 or a Model S? And you know, 3 hours of driving is about the most I can tolerate. Yeah. And then I have to get up and stretch my legs and have a coffee and go to the washroom.
I just did a long drive back yesterday,
so I know
you know
exactly what it's like. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, when people think about EVs and they think about the charging situation, they're always thinking, well, what's it going to take me to charge? What's it going to take me to charge? And honestly, most people only drive, 60 miles, 45 miles, 100 kilometers a day. Mm-hmm. This range anxiety situation, I mean, it's an issue for smaller cars, like a little Leaf. I mean, that's not a long distance car. That's a community little vehicle. It's great for the city. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to go a long distance like I did, 2,500 kilometers each way, that's not a reasonable car to take. So
because you're stopping an awful lot.
Well, you're stopping an awful lot. But things with it, like a Tesla, the behavior of the vehicle is more like a regular gasoline car, where you drive about 3 hours. Then you got to top it up anyways. But look, you're going to be there for lunch and you're going to be there for coffee, and so before you know it, you're already there for 45 minutes. Well, you already got 50% charge in 30 minutes, and it's only going to get better. J.B. Straubel has also announced. Yes. Some time ago, he made comments that they want to get it down. They want to get the charging of the vehicle 50% in 5 minutes.
Wow!
So they can do that as the superchargers and the third-party chargers come up and the battery sizes get bigger. Because this is the fact: when you charge a battery the size of what's in a Tesla, you can slam the battery pretty hard up until it gets to about 80%. After that, it kind of tapers off. Mm-hmm. So if you can just raise that glass of water and make it taller so that you reach that 80%, you can slam the battery a lot harder. Mm-hmm. So things like a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, or say 120 kilowatt hour battery pack eventually, it's entirely feasible that they could slam it in 5 minutes and get a really good 50% charge. Right now it's tough to do because when you have a smaller battery, you're going to hit that 80% pretty quickly. So these things take time. I think it'll work itself out eventually.
Absolutely. And one of the things we mentioned, since we're on the topic of charging infrastructure, in one of our last shows pertinent to here in Ontario, we have gas stations along some of the major 400 series highways called En Route. They're a chain of gas stations that you can stop at every I think 40 or so kilometers, 40, 50 kilometers or so. We talked that they did not have electric charging, and they just went through a major renovation of that infrastructure over the last year, and we were kind of complaining, gee, it would have been nice had they put some EV SEs in there. Well, we got confirmation that they are starting to do that. They're currently working with our Department of Transportation, or Ministry as we call it here in Ontario, to add EV charging stations to all the locations. They don't give a date on when that's going to be done, but if it's anything to do with the government, maybe next year. So, but better, but it's definitely coming around. So then you'll have not only on, and again, this is in addition to the supercharging network that Tesla's doing on their own. We talked about in previous episodes the Ontario government and some of the other governments in Canada, and of course the federal government spending a lot of money on increasing charging infrastructure over the next many years. And the U.S. is following up. I read a report that they're investing $4.5 billion on electric car charging stations. And this is across U.S. network. They hope by 2020 to have coast-to-coast, nationwide, zero emission, make that a reality as far as where you can go to charge up. So this is beyond Tesla's very substantial supercharger network. I mean, I was just looking the other day at their map, and a 300 kilometer range. My goodness, you can get to 1 or 2 supercharging stations in the U.S. It's not like that in Canada yet.
Yeah.
You can't get to the East Coast, and getting across central Canada is a challenge. There seem to be in Ontario and the West right now. So good news for our U.S. folks who are watching the show, that there's a lot of investments. They don't say where, but I'm assuming that these are going to be in conjunction with, we mentioned the gas chain last time that was putting some in. So again, they're going to be spending some money, and that's all good for us.
Yeah, I would say to any of the viewers out there who have a reservation for Model 3 and concerned about the charging situation, I would say don't worry about it. By the time the car comes, all of the stuff will be worked out. You'll be able to do long distance chargers, even if you don't opt into the Tesla supercharger network. You can plug in a CHAdeMO. My understanding is Tesla's probably also working on a combo CCS, which is another fast charging standard as well. It's a plug. It's not really a standard, so to speak. So it's the plug. So yeah, I'm not worried about that in the least. Even if we don't have access to the superchargers, you will still be able to charge your vehicle anywhere you go. I mean, I did an interview with Rolfe and Silke, and his frunk on the front of the Model X had every adapter imaginable. Watch the video. It was amazing. I mean, I like the one where he had the pigtail. It says, I can take 2 plugs and steal the energy from both as long as they're 2 different circuits and double up my voltage.
Exactly.
I thought that was quite clever.
That's a smart guy.
Yeah, he is a smart
guy. You got to be prepared, though. You got a campsite that's only got X,
well, I think people have to remember that that's a special case because he's dragging, a heavy trailer camper, and he has to be prepared for every eventuality, no matter where he is, especially when he's going to campgrounds. For the average user who's just driving between cities, it's not really an issue. You're just going to go to any one of these en routes or Tesla supercharger or any of the others, and just plug in.
Did he mention what his range is pulling the trailer? What is he getting roughly on the highway? I'm not sure if he mentioned that.
Yeah, he did. He said he's getting about 250 kilometers on average, driving 70 kilometers an hour on the road. Somewhere in there.
Still pretty decent on electric.
Well, like I said, it's not as good. I mean, it's a heavier vehicle. You're pulling a big trailer. The thing is that the faster you go, the more wind resistance you get. It's logarithmic. So I mean, there was one of the videos that he posted, and I'll put a link in the show notes, and you can watch it. That they had to do a stretch between when there was no superchargers at all or any high-speed charging, and it was a real nail-biter for them, and they slowed down to 60 kilometers an hour at one point through the mountains because they were going. That's range too, right? It's range. You have to go up the mountains.
Climbing. Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite interesting, but they made it. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's get to our mailbag, the last part of our show for today. We've got a few emails that have come in, and again, we do thank people that do email us. We have a gentleman. I'll call him. I can't see his name here. He was just asking about the biodefense. Do we think that the Model 3 will have the biodefense system? That's part of an option for
I did a video some time ago where I had looked into this. When I explained the biodefense mode on the Model X, my personal opinion is that this is this is a Tesla tentpole feature, and that I believe it will be in the Model 3 as an option. It won't be standard, much like it is now with the current S and X. But I believe that it plays into their game for getting into China, I should say, where there's still a lot of pollution issues and stuff. So for them, it's a tentpole feature. So the answer to that is, I would put money on that.
Absolutely. And same question, another question from the same person. In fact, his name is Mass, if I'm saying that right.
Okay.
He's talking about the internet that's currently free in the Teslas to communicate, that network. Do they think they'll charge for this in the future with the Model 3? Some people like to stream music and things like that, and will that drain the batteries faster if you're streaming music?
No, the power drain on that thing is very, very minimal. We're talking about a battery pack. Keep in mind, a Model S battery pack can power the average home for about 4 days. No, it's not an issue.
Okay.
As to whether it will be included in, well, Tesla is very much a company of habit, and the data plan that facilitates all the infotainment system and the autopilot right now is included with the vehicle at no charge, at least for 7 years. So the owners who bought those cars are already only 4 years into it right now. My guess is that it'll be included at least for the X amount of years of vehicle ownership. It won't be an issue. And by then, if they do tell you that you have to that you do have to pay for it, it shouldn't be all that much. I'm not really worried about that. I think for the fleet learning system, as far as autopilot's concerned, it's almost like it has to be there by de rigueur. So optional, no. It pretty much is. It's part of the vehicle. You really do need it. And Tesla's not the only one. I mean, a lot of other car companies have modems in the vehicle. My Lincoln has a load. I mean, I can start the car remotely through an internet connection and stuff, and I don't pay extra for it. And there's nothing in my agreement that says I have to pay for it. Even if I buy the vehicle out, it's included.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. We have a gentleman, I believe it's a gentleman named Io, and he's asking about the 12-volt battery, which is something I never really thought about too much. And his relevance to that is that he's thinking about, if the stereo system that comes with the Model 3 isn't up to snuff for his listening standards, he'd like to maybe look at, changing that out. And first of all, where is a 12-volt battery to get access to it? And do you think that'll be something that you'll be able to do in the Tesla, is add a sub and amps and things like that and really customize it?
Okay, so the answer to that is that it's already been done on Model S and Model X. People like to add subwoofers, extra speakers, change that stuff out. Yes, absolutely, you can do that. The battery's located in the front of the vehicle. You have to open the hood, and there's some plastic you have to remove. It's a lead-acid battery. Now, some people are saying, "Oh, you got such a big battery pack in the car. Why do you need a 12-volt battery?" Well, the large battery pack in the Tesla vehicle is for the drivetrain. It's not to power your stereo. So that's why they have a 12-volt battery, which is trickle charged from the large battery pack, but it powers things like the electronics, the LTE modem, little things like that. Yeah. So, but the large battery pack in the vehicle is for powering the drivetrain, and I believe the heating. Sorry, the heating. That's right. The heating system in the car, because
HVAC,
the HVAC. Well, mostly for heating, because you need a lot of energy to run a resistance heater. Not air conditioning so much, but the other one. So that's what it's there. So the answer to that is yes, absolutely.
Great. Well, I'm glad that people are thinking ahead about already customizing their Model 3s. That's great to see. Well, that's basically what we had for the mailbag. I know that we have a new email address that you want to let people know about, right?
Yeah. So if you want to mail in a question, now the old email address, if you watch the old episodes, is still there, but we've created a new one. It's a little bit easier for everybody to use. It's m3oc@gmail.com. M3oc, Model 3 Owners Club. At gmail.com.
And you'll put the link on here?
Yeah, I'll put the link and stuff. You can use that. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's about all we have for this week.
I think what we have for this week's show. Hopefully that was informative. That was a lot of stuff we had to cover
to
catch up for.
I'm wearing one of my shirts. If anybody's interested in the shirts, you can find them at shop.model3ownersclub.com. It's also linked on our main website. We have a variety of different designs. I just created a couple new ones that are on there. Some people that were asking for some new designs, so I put some stuff up there too. We also have a Twitter feed. If you're interested in following us on that, it's at Model 3 Owners. And you can also consider joining our forum at model3ownersclub.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because then you'll get notifications whenever we come out with a new episode or a new video.
Absolutely. And you continue to do your short technical videos as well. I watched the last one, which was really good. I appreciate that. And we'll continue to follow all what's news regarding the Model 3 and Tesla and the EV industry as a whole, and have more stuff for you on our next show. And on behalf of myself, thanks for watching. Please continue to watch. Send us your feedback as well. We love getting email and feedback. And you can comment on YouTube, but email's probably even nicer.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Great. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.